Everyone says I love you, but just what they say it for I never knew. It's just inviting trouble for the poor sucker who says I love you.
I love good music.
So do I. Let's get out of here.
Sit down.
Well, I'm certainly grateful for this magnificent turnout, and now I'd like to say a few words. Hello? I must be going. I cannot stay. I came to say I must be going. I'm glad I came, but just the same, I must be going. La la.
For my sake, you must stay. If you should go away, you've spoiled this party. I am through.
I'll stay a week or two. I'll stay the summer through. But I am telling you, I must be going.
Hello, YouTube and YouTubettes. Welcome to another Marx Brothers movie review. My name is Robbo.
And I'm Becko.
And today we are reviewing the movie Animal Crackers, which came out in 1930. The well-known explorer and hunter Captain Spaulding has just returned from Africa and is being welcomed home with a lavish party at the estate of influential society matron Mrs. Rittenhouse. When a valuable painting goes missing, the intrepid Captain Spaulding attempts to solve the crime with the help of his silly secretary Horatio Jameson, while sparring with the anarchic Signor Emanuele Ravelli and his nutty sidekick, the Professor. Becko, tell us who the actors and character names are.
Groucho Marx plays Captain Spaulding. Margaret Dumont plays Mrs. Rittenhouse. Zeppo Marx plays Horatio Jameson. Harpo Marx plays the Professor. Chico Marx is Signor Emanuele Ravelli. Lillian Roth plays Arabella Rittenhouse. Robert Gregg plays Hives. Louis Sorin plays Roscoe Chandler. Margaret Irving plays Mrs. Whitehead. And there's another character that it's saying is a party guest, but the picture is an African American gentleman that looks to be about in his late 20s.
And it's current.
It's very current. So
Robert Allen.
Perhaps there was another Robert Allen that was in the movie as a party guest.
That's funny.
And somehow it got replaced with a young actor. So it says he was born March 1906
he was probably in the time travel scene.
to 1998. So the picture doesn't fit the actor. I don't think there were any African Americans in this movie except for the actual Africans that carry.
There was.
Spaulding probably isn't the most politically correct, but definitely a party guest would not have been.
He appeared in the movie via a left-handed time machine.
Yeah, he wouldn't have been a party guest.
So, Becko, what did you think of this story?
I thought it was pretty good. It was very entertaining. The plot line was very much like a story that I've probably seen a million times elsewhere. It just was fairly a recognizable plot line. The acting was good, and you could actually follow along kind of what the story was for the most part.
Yeah, I think it was a pretty good melodrama, the kind of plays that, like in community theater, where it's kind of chaotic the way there's more than one thief, I guess you could say, in this show, and there's more than two paintings. And so as far as that goes, that is like a fun play. And I feel like this one, there was a lot more action in it from beginning to end than in Coconuts. And I feel like there wasn't as much slow parts. And now we're going to talk about our favorite story arc scenes. And did you have one, Becko?
I didn't necessarily have one. All the good scenes were just funny scenes, so I didn't really have a favorite scene.
A lot of this movie was funny, but I did pick the revealing of the painting. As far as the serious parts, I felt like that was the arc of the movie, where Chandler reveals the painting, and I felt like, in terms of the movie, that was probably the only storyline scene, although there was some funny in it. But as far as the main story about the paintings that was actually any good or exciting. So, Becco, what grade did you give the story of the movie?
I gave the storyline a 4. I just felt like it was a little bit cliche, but it was solid. It just wasn't super interesting.
And I gave it a 7. I think it was a big improvement over Coconuts. Okay, now we're going to talk about the quality of the movie. So, what thoughts did you have on the visuals and production of the movie?
The movie was produced pretty well. It still felt very much like a stage play, but just very well orchestrated, as well as the camera shots and camera angles compared to Coconuts. But one thing that really stuck me, especially as far as the production, the artistry of the movie, were the sets. These sets were extremely elaborate, almost over the top from what would have been realistically a home. The sets were Art Deco, but almost to a point where it didn't even look like a house anymore. It was just extremely like 1920s Art Deco style, which would have been like the very, very cutting edge design. Which, if you think of a woman in her 40s or 50s who has this elaborate home, it probably would not have been decorated that way, which made it seem a little bit unrealistic. It was an interesting set, and I know they were just doing it for the interest of, people watching, but most homes probably did not look like that. Perhaps if it was a hotel or maybe a very young person's home that was just built, might have had that Art Deco theme, but it was just very over the top with the set design, almost too much.
Yeah, I think it felt bigger than Coconuts. Everything in Coconuts seemed small and tight, and this one just felt bigger to me, and it felt more like a movie in a sense, even though a lot of the scenes were set up like on stage, but it almost worked better as a movie and maybe was produced better as a movie. So, do you have any more thoughts on the production or the quality, or we can give our grades?
That's pretty much it.
So, what do you give the quality of the movie?
I give the quality of this movie a 7. I felt like it was pretty well, just the design of it and the flow, the quality of the sound and the music, the set pieces and everything were pretty solid. So just the quality overall, I would give a 7.
Mm-hmm. And I give it a 6. This is the first time you gave a higher grade than me on something. And I think it was still an improvement from Coconuts on my grade. But yeah, this one definitely was a huge step forward in terms of the quality of the movie. Now we're going to talk about the music in the movie. And was there any songs or music that stuck out to you?
This movie was a little less, as far as music goes, the music was a lot more subtle, I feel, than Coconuts. Some of it was a bit unforgettable. One thing I really liked, though, is there was a song called Isn't It Romantic towards the beginning of the movie. And I really liked how it sort of flowed right into Harpo's solo. I thought that was a really good touch. I can't even remember if Harpo was playing a different song, but it almost felt like it was a continuation of the same song. But none of the music stood out to me that much. It wasn't like a music heavy movie, so I don't necessarily have like anything great to say about the music, but I did really like that transition of that love ballad into Harpo's solo.
Yeah, so that was okay. That song was kind of more upbeat than the serious song of Coconuts. I do love the Chico on the piano, and I think Harpo plays some piano on here too, doesn't he?
Yes, I think Harpo actually had a
And that
piano.
whole scene is hilarious. And obviously, the hit song of the movie is "Hello, I Must Be Going," and
Oh yeah.
that's a classic. That's one that most Marx Brothers fans think of when they think of Marx Brothers songs. And there was kind of an intro song. It's a little less, but that song is well performed. And so that's probably my favorite song. And I agree with you, there's less music in this movie than there was in Coconuts. So what would be your overall grade for the music in this movie?
I would give the music a 4. It was well done and solid. It wasn't special enough, I guess.
I gave it a 7. There wasn't much of it, but I think considering Helloing is hugely well known and one of the favorites, bumps it up to a 7. And then Chico's scene, I think, on the piano was one of his best piano scenes in any movie. So for those reasons, I give it a pretty good grade of a 7. All right, so in terms of performances in this movie, who was your favorite non-Marx brother?
Hands down, this was an awesome Margaret Dumont. The way she acts in this compared to the other one, and then even the way I've seen her in other movies, she was just like a happier character that just seemed to easily be patient with the shenanigans going on around her. She seemed like much more of like a loving, kind person and not like a snobby rich woman. But there was just something about her in this movie that I felt that really shined. I felt like she contributed to the comedy instead of just being that straight man in the comedy, that I felt like she was part of it. So she definitely was my favorite character. Possibly, I might have even would say that I liked her better than any of the Marx brothers in this movie. She really stood out to where, even if it was just favorite character, period, I might still choose her.
Yeah, I noticed in the movies sometimes she's very snobby and sometimes she's very cheery, and this time she was cheery.
Mm-hmm.
And it was definitely better. I think it was funner than her character in Coconuts. But I will say that there's definitely movies where I think she really shines more than this one. And I picked Chandler for this. I thought the character of Chandler was great. He was actually pretty funny, and his scenes with Groucho were hilarious. But it's still, like I said, it's hard to pick against Margaret Dumont. Okay, so who is your favorite Marx brother in this movie?
Definitely Groucho. I mean, he tends to be more of a lead in most of the movies, but I just really liked the Groucho character in this movie. His interactions with the other ones, the Marx brothers, were really spot on. But I have to give honorable mention to Zeppo. He mostly plays pretty like straight characters. They almost are annoyed. His characters are usually either annoyed or don't even notice the comedy around him, but I felt like he really was part of the comedy this time around.
Yes, and I also go with Groucho. I felt like he was much stronger in this one than in Coconuts, and had some very genius scenes in this one. And he did well with Chandler, he did well with Margaret Dumont, he did well with Zeppo, and even Chico. So Groucho Marx is my favorite. So what is your grade for the overall performance of the actors in this movie?
I gave that a 7. Again, it was just an extremely solid performance. I'm still hoping for some better things down the road. I'm hoping 10 being my favorite Marx Brothers movie. So I'm giving some leeway of what I'm hoping that it could improve. But I still felt like the performances in this were very solid. I felt like the actors really knew what they were doing. It was like a well-oiled machine compared to some of the scenes in Coconuts where they often seemed a little lost, or that the scene didn't play out the way it was possibly practiced to. But overall, the performances were just really clean and well done.
Yes, I also give the performance 7. I think that in Coconuts, most of the actors were very bland, but I think in this one, most of the actors were actually pretty entertaining. All right, so now we're going to talk about our favorite funny scene in the movie. Did you have any, Becko?
I have two favorite funny scenes. One of them is the scene where Jameson is taking a letter that Groucho is writing to his lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes some of Groucho's monologue stuff doesn't always make a whole lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's just funny and there's a lot of wordplay. But what I liked too is that Zeppo actually contributes some decent comedy in this scene, where you generally don't see Zeppo doing a whole lot of comedy. He always plays like a very serious character. But his questions were just extremely funny, like silly questions that he was asking, which
Like he went along with what Groucho was
yes. So
saying and didn't think
he
anything
had
weird
some
about
really
it.
dumb questions that were silly, but he was delivering them as if it was serious, which was kind of funny. So,
And Margaret Dumont was kind of like smiling at the whole thing.
mhm.
I like I think the funniest thing there was when Groucho swings his cane. Like, well,
Yes.
all that hunga dunga stuff was crazy and funny, but like he swings his cane out of nowhere.
Yeah, so that scene was pretty good. I thought it was a genius scene, and the way Zeppo plays off of Groucho is good. The other scene I really liked was the scene where they're playing cards. I believe it's Chico Harpo, Margaret Dumont, and I think Margaret Irving, who plays Mrs. Whitehead.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the two ladies and then Chico and Harpo. And it's funny that the ladies are like seriously trying to play a game and they can't do anything serious. It's like they don't even know how to play, but they keep going. And the way the ladies treat Harpo is almost as if he was like a child that had special needs. Like they're not weirded out or creeped out by the way he acts. They just treat him like he's a child and they just keep trying and keep moving forward, which I think is kind of funny.
The
That
wrestling
interaction.
match between Harpo and Margaret Dumont right before that is also
Yes.
hilarious.
But most women like her would probably get extremely freaked out by something like that. But
Yeah.
she never does. It's almost like he's a child that she's putting up with, and
Mhm.
it doesn't bother her that he acts that way. So
Yeah.
that's kind of funny.
And then where Harpo's kind of helping the guy set up the table by
By
closing
he
the
opens
legs
it
back
and
up.
then he closes it.
Yeah, so a couple for me is, well, the Groucho strange interlude is one that always sticks out to me. It's just a weird thing where he he breaks the fourth wall several times in this movie. When he's talking to Chandler, he talks about, can somebody give me a program for a minute? Because they forgot their
Yeah, and you
names.
kind of wonder if he's ad-libbing or
Yeah.
if
And then
it's in the script.
the strange interlude was just bizarre. And it's like he's having a dream, a vision, or something. I think it's similar to Fiddler on the Roof, where the guy suddenly talks and everybody else is frozen. But this was kind of funny. But my favorite funny scene was when Chico and Harpo were stealing the painting. And first of all, Chico's like, "Where's the flesh?" And Harpo
Oh, yeah.
mistakes it for flesh, and then fish, and then flush,
Mhm.
and then flisk, and then flutes,
Yes.
and all that. And then meanwhile, Groucho and Margaret Dumont are having their scene on the couch, and that's really funny. I love the line where Margaret Dumont says, "You can't see your hand in front of your face," and Groucho goes, "Well, you wouldn't get much enjoyment out of that."
Yeah. Yeah.
And then when the lights go out, he already had the flash light, and Chico's like, "Where's the flesh?" And he keeps playing, and then he shows him the fish and the flute, plays the flute,
Mhm.
and then he's like, "Did you lose it? Look for it." And he's using the flashlight to look for
To
it.
look for it, yeah.
But that's my favorite funny scene. All right, so your overall score for humor, Becko?
I give it a 7. Again, it was really spot on, very well done, but I'm still hoping for more in other movies. But again, it was just a really solid overall, especially in the humor.
I gave it a 9. I think that there wasn't a lot of space and slow periods in this movie. It was a lot of comedy. I know there's some that are better. That's why I only put a 9. But I think there's a whole lot of hilarious scenes in this movie. All right, so final score of this movie, Animal Crackers. Becko?
My final score is a 6.
And mine is a 7.5.
Living with your folks. Living with your folks, the beginning of the end. But I have dead yesterday, shutting out beautiful tomorrows. Hideous stumbling footsteps creaking along the misty corridors of time. And in those corridors I see figures. Strange figures. Weird figures. Steel 186, Anaconda 74, American Can 138.